Okay, you guys, no matter if you're training for something big or you're just trying to get lean and stay healthy, your body requires a lot of protein. In fact, around 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now, cooking whole foods is best, but I'm going to be honest, sometimes I need help hitting my protein count with clean, on-the-go nutrition that works for both myself and my family. But that is a lot harder than it sounds. I've been searching for months to find a super clean, affordable protein powder that actually tastes good, has a full amino acid profile, and doesn't upset my stomach. Finally, I found Equip Foods Prime Protein. And seriously, you guys, I am hooked. Prime Protein has over 2,000 five-star reviews because there's no junk, fillers, or additives ever. Equip's unflavored grass-fed beef isolate protein powder has only one ingredient. All of their flavors taste amazing. Vanilla happens to be my favorite. They mix well. They can be added to countless low-carb and keto recipes. You can make a quick shake with just 1 scoop and get a 21-gram protein instantly. You guys, that's like eating 4 ounces of steak. Every single batch of Prime Protein is certified non-GMO and is free of glyphosate and heavy metals. If you need a delicious, easy to use, easy to digest, clean protein powder, seriously, you guys need to check out Equip. You can save 15% off with my code DRFIT, DRFIT, at equipfoods.com. And by the way, every single bag comes with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't love it, send it back for a full refund, no questions asked. Welcome to the Fit and Fabulous podcast with Dr. Jaime Seaman. Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Jaime. Welcome back to the Fit and Fabulous podcast. You are not going to want to miss today's episode. I'm telling you right now, put the things down, pay attention to what we're about to say. Today's guest changed my life and definitely provoked a lot of thinking in my brain about health and wellness, weightlifting, exercise, diet. And I want to introduce you all to John Jaquish. He spent years researching, developing, improving approaches to our health. He's the inventor of the most effective bone density building medical technology, which is now partnered with Tony Robbins. I'm sure you guys know who that is. It's called OsteoStrong, and he is also the inventor of X3, which I don't know that we can demo. I don't know if I have enough camera space to demo for you, but we're going to talk all about it. So a technology proven to develop muscle much faster than conventional weightlifting, all with the lowest risk of joint injury. Dr. Jaquish methods are used in training the world's most elite athletes and associations such as the entire Miami Heat organization, NFL and NBA players, as well as Olympians. Dr. Jaquish's book, explaining his non-conventional approach to human physiology, is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. He's also the CEO of Primal Medical Group, a physician group with over 100 general practitioners that understand and require patient application of both Dr. Jaquish's physical medicine interventions like X3 and OsteoStrong, as well as optimized nutrition protocols that we're going to talk about because you guys, your minds are going to be blown. Well, maybe some of you already follow him and already do all these things, but let's dive into it. Dr. Jaquish, welcome to the Fit and Fabulous podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, take us back in time, little John Jaquish. What was life like before you became who you are now? What led you on this path?
After I finished undergrad, I was playing semi-pro. I played rugby all through university, and then semi-pro after that. It was sevens, rugby sevens. It's like 7-on-7 rugby. It's a little faster paced game. And then I was working in relationship management software. So basically just using technology that the company I was working with developed to come up with custom solutions to communicate with customers. So like, for example, Vanguard mutual funds, like that was one of my customers. And so like, it would be like prospectus delivery and sort of management based on what the behaviors were in people looking at the financial information. So if they were looking at like one type of thing in particular, one type of investment, then they got presented that type of investment. Now, this is how the internet works today. But we're talking like 25 years ago. So back then it was like, wow, how does my computer know that I'm interested in that
You just have
particular
to say
type of
it.
investment? Like,
Small white cats, and then one just shows up in your apartment.
wait,
Or
is he
definitely on your
here?
Instagram feed.
Oh, where the hell is he? Oh, no. Okay. My cat's out
His
of the
cat was like right behind him earlier. You guys missed it. He was the cutest dang thing. So
The cat might make another appearance, but then again, if he's wanted, then he won't. He's a cat.
a
He only
true
shows
cat.
up when
A true
he's
cat.
like, trying to piss you off.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to our conversation. So
Yeah.
you
So,
yeah.
I mean, I was not involved in physical medicine at all, and then my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and I was in the middle of getting my MBA at the time. So like I was happy in the software industry, and I was doing phenomenal. And then all of a sudden, my mom hits me with this osteoporosis thing, and now, or I mean, I'm talking about then, but I was like in the moment, like, okay, she tells me she's going to quit hiking, quit playing tennis, and quit gardening because she doesn't want to have a fragility fracture. It's like those were her three favorite things. And I thought, okay, let me learn a little bit more about osteoporosis, because she came home and she told me about the side effects from the bisphosphonate drugs. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I take those drugs either. So she just said, I just got to keep from fracturing. So I have to stay inside all the time. And I thought, like, okay,
Yeah, it
we're like
doesn't make sense.
volunteering to be miserable here. So as I began to research bone, and one thing I was lucky to be born with is I have a photographic memory. Like if I read something and then 10 years later I read something else, I'll be like, hey, it's like that other thing I read 10 years ago, which for some reason I can immediately find. Like, that's just how my brain works. And, you put the two together and it's like, you can't draw a conclusion from one point of information, but you can from two. And so I started to do that. Like, as I was looking into osteoporosis, I thought, okay, let me find the outliers. Let me find who has the strongest bones. Maybe look at what they do, and maybe that'll answer the question of what people should do when they have weaker bone density. Well, the answer was really crystal clear when I started looking at the academic literature, because gymnasts have sky high bone density. They also have tons of injuries. So when you look at gymnasts, it's an easy sport to study because they absorb impact in the same way every time. In fact, if they don't do it in the same way every time, they injure.
Yeah.
So the landing, the hitting the ground is really important for a gymnastics athlete. And so we're looking at the way they hit the ground, how they absorb force. And then, of course, the average gymnast retires at 19 years of age. So I wasn't going to go tell my mother to go be a gymnast. She was in her 70s.
Yeah.
So I go, okay.
Gymnastics is out.
What if I could create something that gives the benefit of high impact forces without the risks? And so that was what ultimately ended up becoming OsteoStrong. And it worked. Like within 18 months, she had the bones of a 30-year-old, and no side effects at all. And we have 300 OsteoStrong locations in 15 different countries now. So major metro areas have them.
Explain, because your memory is so good and you're a really smart guy. I mean, I've seen you just spit out studies after studies after studies. Tell people how doctors are traditionally treating osteoporosis and how OsteoStrong is different.
So there's a category of drugs called bisphosphonates. These drugs keep the older bone material from shedding on the outer cortex, the outside of the bone. So basically, if this is a bone in front of me, let's say it's this wide, and we're looking at a cross section, the middle is trabecular bone, and it's what has the most activity, the most
metabolically active,
generating activity. And then as these cells migrate to the outside, they become more dense. They become pushed together. And so like when you see pictures of the bone matrix, it kind of looks like a honeycomb with all these little walls, and there's voids in between, and those voids become more compact as you get to the edge. So a bone really is more porous in the middle and then less porous on the outside. And that's called the outer cortex. So what the bisphosphonates do is keep the older outer cortex from shedding, because normally it gets to the end and then it just kind of sheds and becomes just calcium in the bloodstream again, and as well as 11 other minerals, calcium primarily. Now, when we look at the bone metabolism, you're really, by taking a bisphosphonate drug, you're interrupting the bone metabolism. And then, of course, the questions are, well, we can only really see the outside of the bone, even with a DEXA scan, which is like a dual X-ray. DEXA stands for dual X-ray absorptiometry. So we have the bone, we're looking at the outside of it. The bisphosphonate drugs make the test we use look really good. But is it actually stopping fractures? And the reality was, it looked like people were fracturing only a little bit less. But when they would have fractures, because the outer shell was harder than normal, they would have what's called a spiral fracture or an abnormal fracture, which is more like a shattering. So instead of a bone having a clean break, it busts apart in a whole bunch of different pieces. And that is a much more difficult fracture to recover from. In fact, that has a high association with mortality. Like
I was just about to say, why should people be scared of osteoporosis? I mean, right. I think most people think you break your arm, you put a cast on it.
Drugs aside, yeah, it's not just putting a cast on. In fact, like a spinal fracture, there is no cast. It just stays there. It just heals on its own. Hopefully in the right place. You really can't do much about it, though. Whether it's in the right place or the wrong place, you just wait and see what happens. So that's a lousy situation. Also, for people who are older who have osteoporosis, the most common activity associated with spinal fractures is sneezing. So it's not like you're like, oh, well, I just won't sneeze anymore. Like my mom's attitude of, well, I'm not gonna go in the garden anymore. I'm not gonna hike anymore. No. Sneezing is the most common activity. So like you're in trouble no matter what. So, okay, how do we address this? By addressing it with what the term I coined was osteogenic loading, which Wikipedia hijacked from me and ended up like I created the term, and there's a whole Wikipedia page about osteogenic loading, crediting all kinds of people who have nothing to do with the term. Yet I'm the first one. Like my first book is titled Osteogenic Loading. So I created the term, and then a bunch of jealous assholes took it away from me.
100%. Yeah.
I still created it, so fuck them.
I hope they sleep well at night.
Well, I mean, it's just we live in a world. The half of the country is sort of the religion of jealousy. Like, I'm going to screw over anyone who has done.
If I can't have it, you're not going to have it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just like the world we live in. And it's like I see the troll attacks on me, and it's just like lie after lie after lie. But,
well, I think that comes with being healthy, though, because you can't buy it. You literally cannot attain it without putting in the work. And so it's like, it's really, yeah.
Well, and of course, people are also jealous of healthy people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
okay. So tell us about osteogenic loading.
Yeah. So I treated my mother, totally reversed her osteoporosis, continued to run a clinic in Napa Valley, California. Not a bad place.
But was this like a prototype? I mean, did you just like make some little prototype device and you're like, Mom, get in here? I mean, what is she thinking?
Literally, I made it in my garage.
Yeah. Okay. I love this.
Yeah. Now, the first one was ugly. Like, it didn't have seat cushions. It had beach towels and duct tape, as pads to like lean your body on to compress certain parts of the bone. Now it's robotic. Like, it looks like the future. If you walk into an OsteoStrong location, you're like, whoa, like this is like some Star Trek stuff. And yeah, it is. It's awesome. But it needed that first step, of course. You don't start with making things that look like they're from Star Trek. It started by, some really rudimentary movements. I had, metal bars and chains and no movement. The movement comes from the body. So when you see someone doing an osteogenic loading event, and I've got these side-by-side pictures of this postmenopausal woman doing it, it looks like she got shorter because a large portion of her legs disappear. Turns out that you can compress the femur by 3 or 4 inches under 1,200 pounds, which I think is what she was dealing with. Now, the bone is supposed to do that. We just don't think of bone like that. We think of it as a hard structure,
solid, rigid. Yeah.
I mean, it is more rigid than muscle, obviously. Yeah. But it's not like glass. Like, it moves, it bends, it absorbs forces, and when it absorbs forces in the lower extremities beyond 4.2 multiples body weight, that's a really important point. Because a lot of people think like, oh yeah, I mean, I'll just go for a walk every day and that's some physical activity and that'll grow my bone density. No. The minimum dose response is 4.2 multiples of your body weight.
So how is it different than just weightlifting?
Say it again.
How is it different from weightlifting? You're saying you can't achieve 4.2 basically with any other mechanism?
No. In fact, even some of the strongest people in the world are not using 4.2 multiples of body weight.
Okay.
So, impact or impact emulation, which is what I call osteogenic loading. So, like when we did the first trial that was in at the Stratford Village Surgery, which is a hospital in East London, we had one of the machines there, and people went through. There was a whole test group that went through this course of loading. Now, these were completely, in fact, if they were athletic at all, if they had any athletic background, they were disqualified from the study. We wanted people who never exercised, just because, like, I didn't, want any factors to raise questions. Like, I wanted a pure test group. And of course, the people who have never done anything, they have the worst bone density than their peers who have been doing some type of exercise. Because when you're younger, the longer you expose yourself to 4.2 multiples body weight, the higher your peak bone mass is going to be when you reach 30 years of age. Generally, it's downhill from 30, but the higher you are at that point, the more bone density you have to last.
So if I'm listening right now and I'm a 30, 40-year-old woman, so I'm not to menopause yet, I'm not even getting a DEXA scan and worrying about bone density. Is this something that you could use to mitigate risk as prevention, or is this better at treatment? When do you start using something like this? Can you be too young? I mean,
for athletic women, we have them using it in their teens. College years, fantastic, because now these are the people who build bone density that are sort of above normal, like kind of supernatural bone density, which is very achievable, not weird at all. So like my bone density is 2.3 standard deviations above normal for a 30-year-old of my age, and I'm 46.
Is there any risk of having too strong of bones, to your knowledge?
Not that anyone has discovered.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I've been at 2.3 standard deviations above normal for like 7 years. So I think there is a density limit. Ultimately, you can have a 5-gallon bucket and you can put 3 or 4 tennis balls in it, and there's still room for more tennis balls. Yeah. Once you fill it to the top, it's at the top. Yeah. So I think your body just kind of self-regulates.
Hopefully you're a good swimmer. You're dense.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm not, because I understand that joke. Like, it's bone's a heavy material. It increases your body weight a little bit. But I don't sink like a rock when I'm in the water.
I wouldn't doubt you for one second. Okay, you guys. So Dr. Jaquish wrote this book, weightlifting is a waste of time. Obviously, very clever marketing for the title, but I mean, you mean it in the literal sense because the subtitle is "So is cardio." So give us the short and dirty of why weightlifting is an absolute waste of time. Because I mean, I go to the gym and I see people lifting dumbbells and doing
Wasting your
squats and
time.
deadlifts. I mean, they look fit. Why is
Do
it a
they?
waste of time?
Does what percentage
Some
of
of
people
them.
do you think are weightlifting?
I was just about to say,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know. Depends which gym and which part of town I go to, but probably
Sure.
like
If you
less
go to
than less than
Gold's
10
Gym
less than
in
10%.
Venice,
Yeah, less than 10% all comers, when you walk into even like a fitness class or they don't, yeah. I
so
actually remember this moment. I was running half marathons. It was after I had my babies, and I thought that I had to run half marathons to get the baby weight off. This was my thinking at the time. And I remember
poor
watching these
choice.
people running full marathons, and I was looking at them and I was like, well, they don't look they don't look very
No,
fit. And that was
they're
like
right
my
out of
revelation. I was like, what am I
casting
doing?
from an
Like, why am I
Auschwitz movie.
running? This is so stupid. Okay,
Oh,
we'll dive into that too. But
yeah, they look
why
sick.
are people just wasting their time right now?
So you notice I didn't call the book resistance training as a waste of time. I did not call it that. The book is really about variable resistance and how absolutely superior variable resistance is to standard resistance. In fact, in the first reference I use in the book, it's Petrella 2008, demonstrated that most studies on resistance training are self-selecting because they look for volunteers. Well, the volunteers for the studies are all already weightlifters. They're not just like, hey, I've never lifted a weight. I should give that a shot in a study. So what Petrella showed in 2008 was that 23% of human beings cannot, under any circumstances, grow any muscle at all by weightlifting. 23% of people. And so that gets an interesting conversation started. Like, wow, that's like a significant portion of the population. Now, why? Let's look for a mechanism. Well, good news. It's pretty apparent. It's not a hormonal difference, not at all. In fact, people can affect their hormones for a pretty strong degree with just nutrition. So the question was why? The answer is where tendons attach in the body. So about 1% of the population has very advantageous tendon layouts. So for example, the origin of the pectoral is on the sternum, middle of the chest, right? Now, the other end, the insertion, can be in different spots. For 99% of the population, it's about right here. It's before the bicep starts, underneath the deltoid at the top of the humerus bone. However, some people have it over here.
Wow.
About 1% of the population has a different location where that tendon attaches. Now, if it's the further away from the origin, that's a lever that's made out of the most elastic material on earth, tendon. So Mike Tyson has this genetic knowledge.
I was just about to say, name some like athletes. Are they baseball pitchers? Are they okay? Yeah, boxers.
Often, like pretty much, when you look at the NFL, especially like wide receivers and running backs, not necessarily linemen. A lineman, like you have if you have like a 14-pound baby, you got a lineman. The most accurate determining factor of how big someone is going to be, I don't mean muscular wise, just big, is birth weight, which shouldn't really be a shock to anybody. But like the linemen are gifted they're just gigantic people. But the power that I'm talking about, the super responders to weightlifting, those are usually the wide receivers and the running backs. And if you look at their tendons, they have tendon insertions like this. So they've just got basically rubber bands inside their bodies that are forcing their muscle to become more active during exercise, which forces growth. Now, you can see examples of this when you watch a sprinting race. Almost all sprinters have really high calf muscles. I mean, this is also common in the African-American community, and they actually have that genetic anomaly more often than people of European descent. So like when you see really high calf and a long tendon, that long tendon is just it's a rubber band. And the bigger and more powerful it is, the more recycled energy. So most people, when they run, 12%, when they sprint, 12% of the energy is recycled because they're stretching that tendon as it snaps back in place. That energy they don't need to contract the muscle to get that energy. That energy is just there because it's stretched and then it snaps back. The more tendon you have, obviously the greater percentage. And so also in the more efficient positions, it forces the muscle to be more activated. So these are the people that are not only going to be faster and stronger, they're going to be able to build more muscle, which ensures that they're even faster and even stronger than that. Now, we can even the playing field by just training with the same method, variable resistance. Like it completely equalizes. So like as soon as I started training with variable resistance, I lifted weights for 20 years. I was even on testosterone replacement therapy because a rugby injury, I got some testicular damage. So I was on TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, since I was 28. Because after having a low level of testosterone, I went in a cardiologist because I was having just irregular heartbeat during rugby games. And the guy's like, your cardiac muscle is paper thin. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I played rugby. That's like 80 minutes of sprinting and stopping. Like my cardiac muscle should be super powerful. And he says, you need to see an endocrinologist. We need to know what your testosterone is. Turns out your heart uses the majority of the testosterone in your body. It's a muscle. And it's the top priority muscle in your body. Right? That makes sense. Keeping the heart going is certainly more important than keeping your biceps going. So, and the body prioritizes it like that. So when I found out my testosterone was 163 nanograms to the deciliter, and I was 28 years old, they were like, whoa, okay, you need to be on testosterone replacement therapy. We need you right around 1,000 nanograms to the deciliter. So I got on testosterone replacement therapy. Immediately, my heart started doing better. Also, that was right around the time I was kind of done playing rugby because it was like one of those, am I going to take this seriously and do it? Like, play overseas and have my life revolve around that? Or am I, and I just thought I just went in the direction of like, I'm just going to take, I got to get a real adult job kind of thing. So went in that direction, still continued to lift weights. I think I might have put on 5 pounds of muscle in 20 years of weightlifting, which is typical. Most people who lift weights get just about nothing out of it. So it's beyond the Petrella study. It's just, I grew muscle really quickly when I was in high school for about 2 weeks. And I put on that 10 pounds of muscle that beginner weightlifters get. And then basically from that point forward, like I said, 20 years lifting weights, maybe put on 5 pounds of muscle. I put on some more body fat. Like I think it was like 19% or something like that when on my 40th birthday. But it was on my 40th birthday that, before that, I was doing a lot of research, looking at the bone density research and realizing just how powerful we are when we're in the impact or ready range of motion. So when I'm here, I am 7 times more powerful than when I'm here. Once you know that, why would you ever lift a weight? It doesn't make any sense. Like, and anyone who's done a push-up knows there's a big difference between when your nose is
because you're starting at the weakest point and you're
There's a
lifting the weight into the strongest point.
Yet for some reason we've chosen we humans have chosen to ignore the variability in our power production capacity and instead just say, lift heavy shit. I mean, it's just like, it's one of those where like the stupid weightlifter stereotype actually is a thing. And it actually tended to sort of
Bro science.
yeah, bro science really, it just sort of shackled the thinking man. It's like, no, this is the way it is. You just got to lift heavy shit. You just got, I don't know how many times I was running these theories by professional weightlifters, trainers, because it was all theoretical when I was talking about
Because it's just about volume, right? To them, right?
it. But to the end, drugs. Yeah, they're all like
Well,
huge fans of performance enhancing drugs.
drugs excluded. Volume, volume,
Well,
volume,
it's just
volume,
sort of
volume.
like you do know the body is supposed to be able to build muscle without drugs, right? And actually, I had plenty of strength coaches. I had an NFL strength coach to laugh at me when I said that. And I'm like, but all your athletes are drug tested. He goes, yeah, they're gifted. He's like, if regular people want to put on muscle, they should just use steroids. And I was like, wow, you suck.
Wow.
I will not mention who this was because he's actually I like him other than that. Now, he was being super honest. That was just how he felt. He's just like, yeah, regular people, like, they're not going to put on muscle without. And I just thought, like, okay, you've been too close to this for too long. You've been working with too many genetic outliers. That's not right. So when I prototype X3, I actually got the prototype. It was built at a machine shop that builds race cars. So I used aluminum. I used some great materials because I wanted even the prototype to look good. And then like I put on 30 pounds of muscle in 1 year.
Wow. 30
After
pounds in 1
40.
year?
My 40th birthday, I got the prototype. My 41st birthday, like my fraternity brothers were looking at me and they're like, I feel like you're not even you. You're like someone else all of a sudden. Because I love, when you put on 30 pounds of muscle on a 6 foot tall person, it's like they're completely different.
So let's pretend you're a genetic freak and you were doubling your dose of TRT. What data do you have on X3? What could people expect using X3 like in a year compared to traditional resistance training, lean body mass gains?
I would say there's maybe 100 different testimonials on the website where people put on 20 pounds of lean mass in 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's from guys that are like, I lifted weights for 10 years or 20 years and I gained nothing. And then
what about
I got
women?
X3 6 months later. I have 20 pounds more muscle. My strength is completely different. My posture is completely improved. Like I'm a high performance machine now. Like that's a standard response. Now, the other challenge I bumped into very quickly was only about 20% of the people who bought X3 had that phenomenon. So that's better than 1%. So weightlifting gets 1% of people strong. 20% of people got stronger with X3. And then I was like, the other people, like, this is supposed to work for everybody. And I found out what the problem was. And this is a much tougher battle. People were massively under eating protein. Right, because they get all this stupid crap from the news that you need your veggies and you need kale smoothies, which
plant-based diet
cause diverticulitis, like all kinds of absolute horrible advice. And also at the same time, I wanted the best nutrition advice for myself. So what I ended up doing is I first looked at nutrition research and realized it is a jungle of contradictory claims, statements, also major biases. Most nutrition research is paid for by Nabisco, General Mills, Pizza Hut. They're trying to get you to believe that the crap they sell is good for you. And they're paying lots of scientists to falsify data to say this. Now, I didn't even want to believe that it was that nefarious. Until well, really until COVID. And then, it was like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
the medical community has no problem whatsoever just blatantly lying to people for political reasons. And I also pointed this out on Instagram. Why does the government want you to eat food that's bad for you? Because it's cheap. And 69% of Americans have their budget managed. So I'm putting welfare and WIC in the same
Yep.
category as Social Security. Now they're very different things, but from the perspective of budgeting, the federal government's deciding who gets what on what, how often.
Yeah.
So would they rather allocate $2 a day so you can eat Oreos and some kale, or $20 a day so you can eat steak? Yeah, they don't want you eating steak because they don't have the money for it.
Yeah.
So they're going to tell you to eat something that's completely suboptimal because it fits the budget. So, okay, I mean, it sucks that we have to get socioeconomic about this argument, but that's just a fact. It's like,
yeah, I mean, when you look
food,
across the US, the places that have the most obesity, the most diabetes, it tends to be our southern states like, Georgia,
yeah,
and they have the lowest annual
yeah.
income. I mean, it's absolutely and utterly related.
It is kind of funny, like the United States with all our social programs, our poor people are the fattest.
Right. They're
That's
supposed
not
to
the way
be
it goes in
starving and
actual.
suffering.
Right. I mean, you go to like a country that
Overfed
has
and
actual poverty.
undernourished. Yeah.
Yeah, like the skinniest people, they're dying of malnutrition because they can't eat anything. They can't afford any food. So I mean, like the gluttony and the bizarre expectations. Like I hear politicians talking about poverty in America all the time, and it's just like, are people buying this shit? Have they not been to a third world country? Like, this is pathetic. So
Yeah, I think recently RFK Jr. was the first person I've ever heard who has kind of said on his political platform that he plans to decrease chronic disease by 50% in this country if he's elected into office. And basically said,
yes,
if I don't do it, then don't reelect me. And I thought that was a really bold statement because honestly, in the last number of years since I've ever been alive, I've never heard that be part of anybody's political campaign. And it's
yeah.
like one of the most prominent issues that our country faces.
Well, he and I have some mutual friends, and apparently he like understands carnivore nutrition and he understands exercise. He's in really good shape. I'm actually interviewing him in
Ah,
September. Yeah.
fantastic.
So
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to
I
hear.
don't know how long of an interview time I'll get, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited because I want to ask that question. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. We still have a corn subsidy. Like, everyone knows grains are terrible for you.
Yeah. And all
Yet
the
we
grains
have
are
a federal
subsidies.
government subsidizing corn so it can be chemically rearranged in the form of high fructose corn syrup so companies can make more addictive candy bars.
Yeah.
Fuck
Yeah.
those guys. That's
you,
criminal.
you know what I
Like,
learned? I
you're
went
going to
to,
jail for this.
it's insane. It's insane. I went to, my husband and I went to Maui and we went to a chocolate factory, like a cacao farm. And I just wanted to learn about the process, right? It was like how they make coffee and whatever. But they were telling me that they take these cacao beans and they get the cocoa butter out of them, and real chocolate, like real chocolate is like it's cacao butter. And he said things like Hershey's, they take that cacao butter out, they sell it to the cosmetic industry, right, to like use on our skin, and then they just put vegetable oil in there. So their chocolate is like it's literally sugar and vegetable oil. It's not even freaking chocolate.
Yeah. Two things that are like the highest contributors to cancer, heart disease.
I was like,
Like,
oh
they
my
don't
God.
care. I mean, hey, if
Insane.
you're eating a Hershey bar, you kind of get what you deserve.
Yeah. Eat
It's just
crappy
like
food, feel crappy.
you not only chose to eat chocolate, which is a poor choice in general, unless it's really infrequent, but you chose the cheap chocolate
Yeah.
that's
Eat some
really
real
made
stuff,
out
you
of like
guys.
industrial trash.
Okay. Tell people why cardio is bullshit.
Okay. It depends on the type. If you're doing high intensity intervals, that's great. So, you sprint hard for whatever, a minute, and then you slow down and kind of catch your breath. So you don't, what hurts people is the steady state cardio. So let's say, they're at 150 beats per minute and they plan on going for an hour. Okay, that's going to upregulate cortisol for multiple days. Now, there's no such thing as a bad hormone. Cortisol is not a bad hormone. It is a hormone that shows up from time to time to generally stop you from what you're doing. So like if you drink too much caffeine, cortisol goes way up and you don't feel good. Getting out of bed doesn't feel good. Also, another instance of when your cortisol goes up. So does that mean getting out of bed is bad for you? No, it's great for you. You need to move around, but it's still a stress to the system and cortisol goes up. The problem with constant steady state cardio is to have the effect, if you want to be a cardiovascular endurance athlete, you need to be regularly raising your heart rate for more than half an hour. I actually think the cutoff is really 20 minutes. But, or they might go for an hour or two and they're raising their cortisol. So chronic raised cortisol does two things. It gets rid of muscle and it preserves body fat. So you stay as fat as possible, as long as possible.
That's exactly what happened to me trying to run half marathons.
That's right. That's what happens to absolutely everybody.
Chubby postpartum mom.
Would be like,
yeah.
Well, everybody's different. Some people thrive. No, they're fucking not. Not everybody's different. How come we don't have 20 different cohorts in every single study out there because everybody's different? Yeah, no, they're not. This is just kind of a universal truth. Like the more cardio you do, the less muscle you're going to hold.
You don't see like super jacked runners. Like when you look at, they're like tall, thin,
sprinters,
lean. Yes. Yeah.
So do you do any skinny fat? Like they're not lean at all. Like I see 100-pound women that look skeletal but still have cellulite.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you do sprinting or high intensity interval training in addition to X3? Do you do sprinting and HIIT?
From time to time. Like when I have the time to do it, like 2 weeks ago, for whatever reason, it was right before the Hard to Kill Summit. I was sprinting, but I don't have time for that. And when I'm on the road, I certainly,
Dr. Sean O'Mara would be proud of you. You can sprint in the hotel parking lots, John.
Sean O'Mara
Put your X3 out there in the parking lot. Okay, let's talk more about nutrition. Where'd we go wrong? You already kind of said under eating protein, and we've talked about people eating ultra processed foods.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You eat a very
then I
you eat a carnivore diet.
Say it again.
You eat a carnivore diet, yes?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, tell people how you came to the conclusion that is optimal.
So when I first started looking at nutrition, I had no bias. If it was like, if the literature had said eat broccoli all day long and, you'll be lean and strong and live a long time, then that's what I'd be doing. But that is profoundly not what's there. Vegetable protein in general does not include the amino acids we need, mostly because we do not have a working appendix. So the appendix in other primates converts fiber into essential amino acids. We don't have an appendix that does that. So fiber, we don't need it. In fact, it causes more problems than it solves. And there's literature to back that up. Because I tell people like fiber you don't need it. In fact, you'll be better off without it. They're like, well, how do you keep things moving? I'm like, I don't know. When you plug up your toilet, do you shove a couple of bath towels in there and just flush it 20 times? Because that's in essence what fiber is. Mm-hmm. You think you're clearing a blockage by adding more blockage? Does that make any sense? Like, I'm an engineer. It probably makes sense to me, and maybe it doesn't make sense right off the bat to most
Yeah.
people. But hey, stuffing more stuff in the pipe is not how to clear the pipe. So, and that's actually not an oversimplification. That's literally what we're told. I got to keep things moving with fiber. No, because when you take fiber out of your diet and you eat all meat, first of all, your bowel movements are almost non-existent. Like, they are so small, and you're like, wait, like sometimes I'll have like 3 pounds of steak in a day, and then the next morning I use the restroom, and I'm like, when I first did this,
That's all you got?
where did it all go? Now, I'll tell you where it all goes. It all goes in your body. Your body uses it. Clue number one. Like, if your body uses it, probably something you should be eating. If not much waste product comes out, that's probably the most efficient food on earth. But my approach really came from looking at all this just silliness and bias in nutrition research and going, okay, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to see, like, what are the things that are, so it's a little like the osteoporosis problem. We take a step back and see, like, who lives the longest? And I wasn't looking at what they're eating, because most, there's so much bias, and it's sort of like every time somebody lives over 100 years, Nabisco flies out and says, hey, we'll give you 50 grand if you say you ate Triscuits every day. So the whole blue zone thing, that's bullshit, right?
Tell people why.
Well, all of the blue zones have one thing in common: no birth records. So it's just like they're all lying, and they're lying, and they get paid by some charlatans that are selling a carbohydrate based product, and have the people say, oh yeah, it's my I just eat a lot of fiber, and that's why I'm 110 years old. And of course, they're not 110; they're like 90. They're just lying. Mm-hmm. So that whole thing is just, forget about all that. As I took a step back, I'm like, okay, let's look at outcomes instead of nutrition, and that'll give me a clue. So once I realized that the two greatest drivers of long life are low levels of body fat, high levels of strength. Those are two things that make you live the longest. Well, there's only one nutrition plan. Only one that coincides with those two outcomes, and that's eating meat and nothing else. So, and that is an infallible way of determining how we should be eating. Like, what are the outcomes? Like, you're not going to get as strong as possible by eating vegetables. And, in fact, with the oxalate issue and the chronic cellular inflammatory issue, you can't even contract a muscle and use your joints properly when you have oxalates in your system. So get them out. It's amazing. Like, when I cut vegetables from my diet, which I never liked vegetables, by the way.
No,
and as soon as I cut them out of my diet, it was just like, nothing hurts. Mm-hmm. It's weird. Like, especially for a rugby player, which, I've done horrible things to every joint in my body, and all of a sudden I have no pain. The pain, yeah, I took some abuse from rugby, but the pain was coming from the toxins in vegetables. Now, fruits don't include those toxins. So, like, I will say, if somebody wants to have a carbohydrate, if they're like, God, I just really want to have something sweet, I don't do it, but like, my wife's a perfect example. Like, especially around her menstrual cycle, it's just like,
yeah, can I like have some blueberries or something?
Yeah, right. That's what she does. Raspberries and blueberries. And usually mixes it with kind of the bitter Greek yogurt, so it's a little bit of contrast.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's like, and she ends up having like 6 or 7 grams of carbohydrates a day.
Do you think women need a few more carbs than men? I mean, we're still talking like real low carb diets, but do you have any thoughts, in literature you've looked at? I mean, I guess my real question is, do you think zero carb is really optimal, or do you think, we could have a lot of
body
muscle
frame.
and be lean between 0 and 50 or 0 and 30, or does it have to be 0?
So I noticed very quickly. I mean, my wife is really the only female I've ever like watched, monitored, from this perspective. For just from proximity reasons, like she's just right there all the time. So I mean, I
Subject
can't even
one.
by the way, doesn't she look just like this picture? Like you're the
Exactly.
youngest?
Exactly. Somebody
Yeah,
painted that. It's not a photo.
I painted it.
You painted that?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
I
She
don't think
did.
I knew that. I've seen that picture shared, but I did not know you painted that. That's incredible. That's incredible. You get
I
like
got I
7
got a
gold
couple
stars. You're
artists to
like
start with. This
lift
this
weights, eat
one,
meat, and you can paint.
you
That's
see the
incredible.
one, the other
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. If you
Yeah,
guys
so
are on
that says
Apple, you got to go to YouTube and see what we're talking about. So
the
that's awesome.
oh yeah, if you're listening to this, you're really missing out. Yeah, that one I was commissioned to do for a Lebanese law firm. It's hanging
Mm.
in their lobby, but it's a picture of Beirut. It's sort of in the background, and it's a woman in an evening gown holding a machine gun. You know,
How long did it
that's it.
take you to paint this picture of your wife?
Mm,
How many
I mean, I used
hours?
some digital assistants.
Yeah.
Right.
Still
Yeah.
though.
So I mean, like it was some like basically I created an image of her which I kind of traced over,
Yeah.
like a pic, like
Like
photo.
paint by numbers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not torturing myself. I started with a clean sheet
Yeah.
of paper.
It's
Um,
amazing.
and then I digitize the image, and then I made 4 different layers, and then space them out equidistantly, which is why you see like the fade going this way
Yeah.
of different colors. There's like a green version of her, there's a pink version of her, there's a yellow version of her, and they all sort of bleed away.
Yeah.
Which was it was kind of inspired by this painting called Spectrum that was in it was in a TV show that she liked. She always loved the painting, and the original was up for auction. And she's like, "Oh my god, they're selling my favorite painting!" And I was like, "Sweet, I'll just buy it." And it was 8 million British pounds, which around like $14 million.
You can just
So
buy her
I'm
another
like,
cat. She doesn't need the painting.
well, I was like, I'll just make one with you. And she's like, oh, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't.
That's awesome.
Tell me
That
I
is
can't
cool.
do something.
That's a labor of love right there. Okay. So tell us what your daily regimen is like, because I know you do some fasting too. Give
Mhm.
us an idea of like your daily schedule.
So I'm working on some nutrition programming with options because what I do is great for somebody who wants to be the best, who wants to be now. I say the best. I'm 46 years old. I think I'm in much better shape than you know almost
Peop-
100% of people my age. Though every once in a while somebody's like, "Well, you'll never look like Arnold Schwarzenegger." Yeah, the pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger that you see were him in his 20s.
You went plant
So
based. It didn't go well.
okay, yeah, right. I mean, and for a lot of other reasons, it's like, okay, you just compared me to like the best guy ever. The fact that you even compared me means I won. I won
Right.
this argument. So anyway, like to be the best, I've identified a couple of different approaches. So fasting is so much easier than calorie restriction. Just hands down, like you're not hungry until you start eating. Small meals drive you out of your mind.
Yeah.
And they're not sustainable because I see people who take like a bodybuilder's approach to dieting and they limit their calories. And guess what? As soon as they have their contest or as soon as they hit their goal weight, they
Off
balloon
off
right
the
back up again.
tracks.
It's not sustainable. But being carnivore with fasting, so no carbohydrates or very low carbohydrates. Also, I didn't really answer the women question. When it comes to carbohydrates, nobody's really zero because there's glycogen in muscle meat. I mean, yeah, it doesn't show up on your whatever fitness pal
CGM, yeah.
application, right? But there's carbs in there. I noticed in what I was saying about observing my wife, she started really preferring eggs and cheese. Well, there's carbs in eggs and cheese. Now there's 0.4 grams of carbohydrates in every egg. And so, I'm thinking, that's interesting. And she didn't know that, by the way. She just gravitated towards those things. So there's no clinical data that suggests anyone does better on carbohydrates. And I come across people all the time. They're like, well, I do better on carbs. Oh, you mean you're fat? Okay. That's really no one does better. All of the studies that look at athletes and athletic performance, when they go, as close to zero carbohydrate as they can, there's no performance difference.
Do you think some of it is when people try to reduce dietary carbohydrates, they're not managing sodium and potassium, especially just in the first couple of weeks? I think the longer you've been on it, you're
in the
fine.
First couple of weeks,
but what I see is people, they're like, I'm going to go keto, and then no management of sodium and potassium. And they're like, oh, no, I needed carbs. And then they add carbs back in. And then it's this self-reinforcement, like, oh, see, I do better with carbs.
Yeah, I do think that's it. And what my wife was like, I'm hypoglycemic. And I'm like, put some salt and some warm water and slug it down. And a minute later, she was like, it's gone. Right. You have an electrolyte imbalance. Well, also think about when you're having carbohydrates, you retain 4 grams of water per gram of carbohydrate. You take the carbohydrates out of your diet. Now you're retaining way less water, which means you have less cerebrospinal fluid, which means your brain is not floating. It's sitting on the inside of your skull, which gives you brutal headaches. So electrolytes can make up that difference. For a period of time, I encourage electrolyte use. But then, for me, in fact, I just ate a ribeye before starting this call with you. That was the first food I had in 85 hours, or moisture. I had a couple of glasses of water with that steak. So I dry fasted.
So you were dry fasting?
Yeah, for 3.5 days.
What about the people that say that you lose muscle with fasting?
Well, I mean, some of those people are just fools. I don't know what they're talking about. That's not what the literature says. When Peter Attia says it, the guy would fast for 10 straight days. And that's not really an intermittent fast. That's just not eating for days and days and days. Intermittent fasting is 48 hours, 72 hours. What I just did, 85. Detraining starts in 9 days. Now, detraining, meaning you stop exercising and you start losing muscle. So that takes 9 days. However, if you're training with suboptimal nutrition, as in none, certainly be suboptimal, you're not going to be able to really stimulate anything. And so, you're going to lose muscle. But I would never have people fast for that long. In fact, if they want more out of their fast, they should look into dry fasting, which my last fast was dry.
Explain why dry fasting is better than drinking fluids and not eating.
Well, I don't want to say it's better. Wet
fasting sounds like a weird name.
Yeah, well, it's water fasting is generally what they call it. As in all you consume is water. With a dry fast, your body still has plenty of water. It's called metabolic water. It is what suspends fatty acids within fat cells. When you are dehydrated, that dehydration, it'll last for 4 or 5 hours, and then all of a sudden you're not dehydrated anymore. What happened? Also, even multiple days of dry fasting, you will urinate the same amount every day. Where's it coming from? It's coming from your fat cells. So your body starts pulling water out of fat cells. This is called metabolic water. And it rehydrates you. Now, those fat cells get destroyed, which is very different than regular weight loss. So calorie restriction shrinks fat cells, but the cells are still there. So this is why you see people like on The Biggest Loser, they lose like 150 pounds and they still have all the cells of, a 400-pound person. And now they're, 250-pound person. But as soon as they stop massively restricting calories, they blow right back up to their old size because the cells are still there. If they overeat just a little bit, it's guaranteed it's going to be stored. And so they're at a major disadvantage because of how fat they have been there, for an extended period of time. That's their homeostasis, being fat. With dry fasting, they can actually destroy those cells, which I think is a huge opportunity. Now, you got to talk to your physician and you got to read the research. There are 2 papers, one out of Germany, one out of Greece, that talk about 5 days, no food, no water. Read them out loud to your doctor. If your doctor says, you've gone over the, minimum appointment time, say like, can I pay you extra so I can read this to you? Don't ever leave a study with a physician because they won't read it. But if you read it to them, they're usually too polite to tell you to get lost.
I love that. I love that.
GP,
okay.
My GP hates me.
So I want you to tell people, first of all, where they can find X3, but I want you to tell people about the new Force Bar and why this is the new best thing when it comes to X3 technology.
Yes. Yeah. The Force Bar. So X3 is the world's most powerful variable resistance home product. There's a lot of ways to get variable resistance at professional powerlifting gyms. You can't really find it at a standard gym because it requires very specialized setups, banding, sometimes chains are used. So the more of the chain that you lift up, you're lifting, a greater percentage of weight as you move through space, similar with the banding. Variable resistance in every case, in every serious study, has outperformed standard resistance training multiple times over. Like it's almost like one is effective and the other one's just not effective. Regular weightlifting, hence the title of the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. It's really weightlifting is a waste of time by comparison to what we can get with variable resistance. So, and you that's laid out like right in the first chapter. So like sometimes people see the cover and they're kind of like irritated, and then they start reading and they're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, there's a solution to this problem. So, but that was X3. The problem with exercise in general, strength exercise in general, is we don't really have a good way to measure progressive overload. So progressive overload means you are training with a slightly greater amount of work every session.
Reps and weight. One of the
Reps,
two or both.
or weight, or just time. The problem is, other than counting repetitions, which is very inaccurate, you don't really know. So sometimes somebody starts lifting weights and they do 10 repetitions with a given weight. And then the next time they go in, they do 12 repetitions with that same weight. So, yay, that's progressive overload. No, because you did those repetitions faster, which actually means you did less work, not more work. And there really hasn't been a way to track progressive overload. And while progressive overload is the principle that drives all muscular growth, there really hasn't been a way to measure it. So now, I mean, obviously over time, when you have somebody who starts off not very muscular and, they put on 10 pounds of muscle and they're lifting heavier weights for more repetitions. Yeah. I mean, there's been some progressive overload there, but measuring it from workout to workout the increments are so small. You can't see them by just counting repetitions. You need something more accurate and repeatable. So I came up with a version of X3 called X3 Force, which captures the force. So you set it up Bluetooth on your phone. It tells you exactly what your work output is. So slower, more controlled repetitions, because the software samples 3 times per second, it gives you credit for creating more force because you did, as opposed to a faster, less controlled repetition. So slow cadence, 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down is generally what you want to stick to. And if you do that, you will see that you have grown muscle every single workout. You'll actually see it plotted on the screen right in front of you. You will be stronger every single time. And nothing has been able to deliver on that idea. Some things have tried, but
such an objective way.
I expect the X3 Force Bar to absolutely take over the entire fitness industry. Like, I think in 10 years, there won't even be a fitness industry. It'll just be X3. Like, that's how powerful it is.
It's amazing. Okay, so to wrap up, John, we're going to pivot into the last part of the podcast called the semen analysis. My favorite part. Give people your top 3 takeaways. What do they need to do tomorrow to start living a better life? Besides ordering the X3 system.
3 single words or 3 sentences?
3. You can have as many sentences as you want. What do people got to change, like right now? It's going to take time to live the life of John Jaquish.
Get carbohydrates out of your diet.
Okay.
Like, if you go, I almost hate calling it carnivore because that just sounds so aggressive. You know, what's a carnivore? Like a lion. It's just like some. Yeah, like guys get into that, but I think that's a turn off for women. I'm I'm just going to level with everybody. Nutrition is animal protein. Anything that's non-animal protein, I can shoot it down. Like, oh, it's got a lot of vitamins and minerals. Yeah, but the vitamins and minerals, the number of those things, the recommended daily allowances were driven by expert opinion in the 1930s. It is the weakest, most piece of information in medicine today. It's an absolute abomination, an embarrassment. Like, literally, the shittiest advice is on vitamins and minerals. So what is there to do? Well, what I do is I eat primarily muscle meat. Now, I've always liked liverwurst. My mother's from Belgium. They ate a lot of liverwurst there. I don't know. It's close to Austria. It's close to Germany. It's a liverwurst part of the world. So, like, I grew up like a burger patty and a slice of liverwurst, and just melts into the burger. And I just think that's dynamite. Now, the good news is, if you're a nervous pants and you worry that I'm not going to get all the vitamins I need, because there's always somebody like that, it's like, eat some liverwurst. Now, eat it in proportion to how you would find it in nature.
If you were going to,
there's 500 pounds of muscle meat in a cow.
Yeah.
In one cow. And the liver weighs 2 pounds. So basically, for every 250 pounds of steak you eat, you need about a pound of liver. Or just a ratio.
It's definitely not that much.
So you do not need all that much at all. In fact, if you have a lot of it, if you have way too much, you can get vitamin A poisoning. That's bad. You don't want that. So
especially polar bear liver.
2 ounces of liverwurst. About 2 ounces a week. Because it's so flavorful. Like, you don't want to have it like every day.
Well, and that's like, I always wondered if the desiccated capsules really had enough, but like what you're saying, that's probably right. You're probably fine just taking some desiccated capsules.
Yeah. In fact, amongst the Liver King's problems, the worst thing I think he was doing, for those who are listening and don't know what the Liver King is, this guy was promoting eating liver, and he would eat so much of it. And I'm like, and what he was doing on camera, I'm like, you're going to get vitamin A poisoning. Like, you're not supposed to eat liver like it's steak. But the guy ended up, he was on a bunch of steroids and growth hormone and shit like that. He's lying about it. So, bummer. I liked his message of eating liver. I hoped he was natural. I really wanted him to be a natural. But he wasn't.
No luck.
So, you got to start realizing that carbohydrates exist. First of all, there's no such thing as an edible vegetable. They've all been engineered, all of them, in some way, cross-pollinated or whatever. And they were always, from the very beginning, developed to feed poor people. So let's find something to feed people so they continue living, but we don't really care how healthy they are. Like kings, pharaohs made these decisions thousands of years ago, and it wasn't for health. It was because it was cheap. Mm-hmm. So don't go cheap when it comes to your health. Stop eating grains, stop eating fruits, stop eating vegetables. Meat is nutrition. And so that's like my biggest takeaway. Then the other thing is, if you have body fat to lose, really go down the fasting rabbit hole. Like, you don't need a dry fast. Like, you can say that's crazy. I think it's like the most natural thing ever. Once you've done a proper dry fast and your body's used to fasting, like, it's like a godlike power. In fact, Jaime, like, if you look at my face, you can tell my face is leaner from when it was 2 weeks ago when we were hanging out.
Yeah.
Like a lot. So it works so well. And then the other thing is variable resistance. Like, read the book Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. Everyone who's read it, even people who don't use X3, like, little old ladies who just want to use variable resistance at the gym, maybe they only need one band that provides a little bit of resistance. The fact is, you're 7 times stronger when you're at extension than when you're in the weaker range of motion. So once you know that, a weight doesn't make sense. You need the weight to change as you move. That's what we need to trigger our bodies to grow.
I love it. Okay, you guys, get the carbs out of your life. Try some fasting, eat your meat, and do variable resistance training. Maybe you'll be lucky enough to look like Dr. John Jaquish. You guys, incredible. Thank you so much. You guys, thank you for listening. If you made it this far, share this with somebody. Seriously, we depend on you to spread these messages around the world. We will catch you guys on the next episode. Did you guys love that last episode of the Fit and Fabulous podcast? Well, of course you did. And I want to keep bringing you the most amazing content from the most incredible people. And you can help me by subscribing to the Dr. Fit and Fabulous channel. You guys know where the button is. Just click it. It's the doctor's orders.